season 3, episode 2. What's the title of this episode?
We could just call it the Fight King episode.
That works.
It's a great Finn and Jaker where it's just them having a one-off adventure without consequence, which is very, as you were saying, Eric, early Adventure Time.
Yeah. So, okay, I had a thought when I was watching this. It seemed like a lot of things just didn't make any sense in this episode. And it just like didn't matter, didn't have any point. They're just like Finn and Jake being crazy for no reason. And I was thinking back to You Forgot Your Floaties, which was like one of the heaviest episodes where like every little thing means something, even if you don't know what that something is. And like watching that episode was such a bonkers experience. But you know that there's so much happening that you can't possibly understand, except none of it actually matters. It's like the inverse of You Forgot Your Floaties.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this guy talking about? Like, who are...
Okay, so we should jump into the specifics and try to pull it apart, I think. So Finn and Jake are out doing stuff. They come across the Fight King who's in a deserted Coliseum. They debate whether or not to go in. They do. Get inside. Fight King's like, you have to defeat my ghouls. They do it. Jake comes up with his own plan that's different than Finn's. You don't think it's going to work out. Finn seems to be under the spell of the Fight King. He defeats all the ghouls. Right as he's about to kill Jake, he goes, nah, psych, and defeats the Fight King, and they go on their way. There's my 1 minute. Eric doesn't like when I go nitpick.
Mm-hmm.
So in there, this is Adventure Time. Lots of crazy shit happens. So Eric, let's get into the stuff that happened in the episode that you were like, what the fuck is going on?
They're fighting these gladiator battles, but they kind of set it up as like there's not a reason for any of it. They're just like doing it to hang out. They think it'd be fun. Well, so then the whole time I'm thinking like, okay, what's the actual lesson they're trying to learn?
So you thought that there would some real reason for them to go do it would present, because I mean it's probably one of the funniest parts of the episode. Yeah.
When they decided to go in. Yeah. It feels like a side quest, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
They start at the end of a previous mission that they clearly were saving baby porcupines from a giant hamburger monster on purpose.
Yeah. A classic way to open Adventure Time episode.
Those were baby porcupines. I was like, I couldn't quite make out what animal it was.
Yeah. I think so.
They almost look like owls, but
the ooh version of baby porcupines with little owl beaks, I guess.
But the way they curl up is very porcupine.
Right. And as they're leaving that mission, they see the Coliseum and immediately identify like this is a trope. In the actual episode, Jake and Finn are talking to each other like the Fight King, or he introduces himself and they're like, that's a trap. Like we're gonna end up having to fight all of these gladiators and the doors are gonna lock behind us, and they just list all of the cliched things that will happen in this type of story and then convince themselves, actually that sounds super fun, let's do it anyway.
And just talking about it, they're like, oh, that actually sounds rad.
Which is true to their characters. It's right up Finn's alley to just like kick a bunch of ass, and like prove some ghoulish demon king wrong.
And in this part of the series, as we were saying before, like the other things haven't exactly presented themselves, like Flame Princess, like the friendships with their other people that they might have somewhere to go. This is like pure just we adventure.
Yeah. And so I jumped in and I watched it and I was kind of like, man, this is like pretty straightforward, just a straightforward like Mortal Kombat, like kickboxer, like just a tournament style like reference for a whole episode. And I was thinking like, where is this in like the wider story of Adventure Time? And I was kind of surprised at how much happened before and immediately after. Like the next episode is like a big time heavy hitter that opens up a ton of interesting stuff.
Yeah, which one's right
Memory of a Memory?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with Ash and going into Marceline's memories.
Yeah.
And
we did that, right?
I'm a Buff Baby comes in the next episode.
We did that, and we did Conquest of Cuteness right before it.
I feel like it's sandwiched between like big episodes that I really remember. And this is like a simpler one. But as you mentioned, like I think it's so important that they do episodes like this to not just like assume that you understand Finn and Jake and their relationship, but that you actually see it. Like you see how they interact and like how they build to the characters they become later.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the reasons this stuff is so rich for me to go back and watch, because like you could just assume Finn and Jake have a certain type of relationship just from like the voice actors and the charisma they have. But like there's legitimately episodes where you can see them like working through their differences as brothers brothers as adventurers and everything. So it's like really cool to like spend a whole episode doing that and not just like fast forward to like the lore or the big plot stuff, which I always like to do.
Yeah.
I thought about that as we were watching, and because there is some tropiness to it, one of the tropes that they kind of subvert was that when they get into the thing with the Fight King and they got to defeat him, Finn comes up with his plan and Jake immediately tosses out another plan. And
Jake is being real zany.
yeah,
This is the thing I just couldn't wrap my head around. Like, why is Jake being so out of control bonkers?
right. Well, now, see, what I think was cool about that is, to Dave's point, is that when presented with this challenge is like, how will Finn deal with it? And like, what are the possible outcomes of Jake coming up with this insane plan that won't help anything, and like what's gonna happen? And usually it would go one of two ways, where it's like Finn gets really mad at Jake and they separate, or like Jake's plan kind of ends up working. It all meets in the middle. And I guess the coolest part is that Finn's kind of cool with it and accepting. Like, he's not mad at Jake for always screwing up his plans, which is what would usually happen, is like, because they set it up early in the episode, there's a plan that Jake didn't listen to and did his own plan, and now it's happening again. And so it's almost like they're setting up a confrontation for Finn to just go like, you know what, Jake, like, you're always messing up my plans. Like, I almost died this time. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, that's what should happen. But Finn doesn't do that. He just kind of accepts what it is, because that's part of who Jake is.
He totally takes it in stride and just like basically like absorbs it into his plan without even having to tell Jake about it. He's just like, I know how you're going to behave, and I am going to use that to like build my own plan and not bother bringing you into it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and he's cool with it, and I that's, to your point, it speaks volumes about their relationship, where he's not trying to change Jake or yell at him or anything.
And it fits with like who Jake stays like that through this whole series, where he kind of can't be bothered. Like, I watched Ocarina a little bit later because I was just looking for some good Jake episodes, and it's like his kids are furious with him for not being a father to them and for not having a job, or they buy his treehouse and kick him out and evict him and stuff. And it's like, he can be very frustrating, but they set it up so early that this is him, and they return to it for good reason, and without just being like, here's an annoying character trait for an overpowered character just to like nerf him or something. Like, it's like kind of because he's overpowered, he doesn't have to worry that much ever, and he's surrounded by like much more vulnerable characters who need to like win these fights. And Jake's like, I'm gonna go dig for a lava hula hoop, everything will be fine.
Yeah, we've talked about a little bit how the distance in Jake's character development over the series is far less than compared to Finn's character development. And it's what we eventually wind up seeing is it's because this is really Jake's last instance of reincarnation before he reaches Death World 50. And like he's so close to Nirvana at this point that he really can't be bothered to give a fuck about
their
anything.
Souls are at different places in their journey, which is like crazy to think that a cartoon established that so well and like so believably, and you totally follow it.
Yeah, I wonder how early on they like decided on that or made that discovery or connected it.
I feel like this show is so easily retconnable. Like from the jump, like they made it so open that they didn't ever write themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
They could always decide to go back and revisit something and give it a new direction, and it would be totally plausible. And I mean, it's part of what makes this show have like an open world kind of feel. Like, it's very flexible, I think.
I think that's a really hard balance to strike, to leave things open-ended and undecided enough, but still deliver on like satisfying character arcs and plot lines and world building.
Yeah.
It's, I think, one of the most successful things about this show for me is that it's just like endlessly engaging without being annoyingly, vague.
Yeah.
And sometimes they swerve you and you're kind of like, I wanted to know more about the baby porcupines or about that like giant hamburger monster. But like, you're not going to give that to me, but maybe when I'm 40, we're going to find out what the rest of that episode was or something.
Yeah. I kind of wonder what the supercut of Finn and Jake duo adventures would be. Like, what are the episodes that are only just like Finn and Jake one-offs?
Oh, it'd be cool to watch it sort of like that and then see the similarities and differences between them.
Yeah, and like just take out all the heavy plot stuff and just
Yeah.
like just look at their hangout adventures.
As for like what they are, like they're adventurers, right? They're like
This is their job.
yeah, this is their calling.
Yeah.
to save porcupines, then immediately go into saving a bunch of trapped souls, kind of on accident, just because they were working out some stuff
Yeah.
between themselves.
Yeah.
Like for fun, they like save a bunch of like Roman ghosts.
It was fun with the ghosts, how they tried to ground them with some specifics. Like it's like they're very tragic.
They're so tragic. It's like very sad when
Yeah,
they're fighting.
I like that they do this sometimes in the show where Finn and Jake enter a scenario, and it's a scenario that has existed for a very long time and has its own lore and is very rich and very deep. And is like there's like all sorts of backstory. I think of like when like the tiny Manticore comes in, and like this feels very similar. Where you're like, oh man, this whole Fight King thing has been there for thousands upon thousands of years. It's been built up over generations and all that stuff. And they just sort of like slide on in and just like have fun and then dismantle it, and it's gone forever.
Big time main character syndrome with those two. Yeah, but like so those ghosts are paired up, right? Like
Yeah.
they have ghost gladiators to fight Finn and Jake. And you realize throughout the episode that like everything is based around pairs. Like they clearly were set up, those ghosts that they fight in each round or whatever, if you're thinking of like a tournament style thing, are all clearly former partners. You can see it like in their scars, like the weapons that the like other ghost has clearly is the weapon that gave the scars to the one that like, so Finn's fighting someone with a
Nice
trident.
observation.
Yeah, Finn's fighting someone with a trident, so Jake's ghost has like 3 slashes, scarred all over their bodies. So that's like where you first start figuring it out, and then like, or like the more subtle ways, and then you hear the ghosts like crying out for their regrets.
Right.
And like that is the hint as to like where this is going, that like Fight King is forcing these gladiators to kill their best friends to win his honor, but they're all just like ghosts who are trapped here in his stadium forever. Jake is convinced that Finn is like trapped in the Fight King's like web, and he's totally falling for it. It lends to Finn's skill set that like he'll just fight all day. Jake will get distracted and Finn will fight all day. Like that's what these two characters do.
Fight King or not, that's kind of what they do in most episodes.
Yeah. While I think we justified Jake's actions in this episode, he was quite silly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yo,
Annoying
next
even.
level.
Yeah. Like really obtuse. I mean, his whole tropical island
Right.
fixation.
Which is like, okay, so it's a Rebecca Sugar episode, and so we get a ukulele song.
Of course.
And it's a good one. Like on a tropical island.
I
It's
mean,
not like the top like
not
listing
top
for her.
tier, but
But it's good. It's a good one. It's like still in my head.
And the funniest part of it to me is his obsession with morale. Where he's just like, gotta keep morale up. And like at some point he realizes something's wrong with Finn. He's like, the morale it must be low. That was funny.
Yeah.
I know. See, like I was expecting some kind of like twist, maybe, because Finn looks like he's been possessed by the Fight King sword. Like it looks like he's under the influence somehow. And then you see Jake that's doing all these wacky things underground, and it's like, wait, is maybe Jake the one who's really possessed? Like, has he fallen victim to some crazy magic spell?
So his actions were so zany. You thought he was under a spell. Yeah. And they might have pushed it a little too far.
I know. I was like, what's the significance of this? Like,
It was a really bad plan. It made no sense. And he didn't really even follow through with it at all. He didn't even try.
It was very funny where first time it's not working. But what was funny though was that he's like, take a dirt decoy of me. And it was hilarious how well that dirt decoy worked the entire rest of the episode. I laughed really hard. So Finn goes up to battle his first ghost, and he brings up the dirt Jake, and he goes and he battles one, and the other ghost comes and they go and stab Jake, and they cry out like how sorry they are to be fighting him, but they have to. And after they stab dirt Jake, that gladiator disappears, and I was like, oh my God, his plan is working. Like that's actually a really good plan.
The decoy worked.
Yeah.
It also gives us a really good Fight King line, which is pity the dog falls. And I felt like the Fight King's delivery in this episode episode was really, really good. Like
Yeah.
that voice actor, I think it's the same one who does Cinnamon Bun.
Is it?
Yeah, and I just think that he brings like a lot to that character because, like, as we've mentioned, like there's not a lot going on in this episode. Like the plot recap, really quick, not a lot of settings. It's really like once they get to that Coliseum, they're there the whole time. And so I think like bringing in that the character design and the voice acting of that character is just really, really good stuff, and has some. Oh, and another moment I want to shout out from the fight game. After Finn and Jake like list out all the reasons that they know that this is a trap and decide to go back anyway, the second they go back in, he yells, "Fools!" And it's just such good direction because like they know that they're what they're doing, and he's like still going through his script of like, I tricked you. It's like, nah, you didn't. They just want to fight anyway.
Yeah, I tricked you.
Yeah.
The gates are closing behind you, and now you must defeat my ghouls.
Yes, exactly.
So it is fun. I mean, in the show, they do different types of voices that are way more natural than you'd ever get. Like Finn, Jeremy Shottas is that way. Tree Trunks, my beloved Tree Trunks, of course.
The best.
But I like when they like pepper in someone like this that's like really nailing it to show the contrast.
Yeah, it's D. Bradley Baker, which I don't even know like what his regular voice sounds like. He's the guy that does all of the animal sounds in like every cartoon.
Wow. That's what a trick.
He's in Avatar. He does like all the animals. Like any random show with like a pig squeal, that's him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Fight King was cool. It's cool to have Fight King in. You know, it's a very interesting character design where like the Fight King is so destroyed and like he has no right arm, he has no left eye, he's got all these weapons around him, but it's clear that he can't fight himself, which is different from like I feel like the other royalty embody whatever the hell they are. Like Slime Princess is slime,
Right.
you know, like he's Fight King. Well, I guess he's the king of other people fighting, but you'd think that he would be this like that he would be the final boss. That's what I was prepared for.
It's all psychology and magic with him.
Yeah.
It made me think of like watching this episode again. I was kind of like, where does this fall? I was a little surprised at how much like lore was happening around it, how many big events were starting to happen in the series. And then this one is just like pretty straightforward. But it made me think about, in addition to like good Finn and Jake adventure, just like straight up adventure episodes, also like Adventure Time playing with tropes. Like that's a favorite thing of theirs to like kind of upend these like familiar concepts and storylines and scenarios. And it made me think a lot of Dungeon Train. Is that the name of that one?
I thought about that episode too.
Yeah, where it's like they even identify in that like the train is a loop. It's all just like grinding. You're just grinding for gear.
We're gonna do that ep very soon. I've never seen it.
Oh, cool.
This episode, I'm like, what? I don't understand what the end result was of like how did their relationship develop? Like I don't think it did.
I think you get like a really nice like they accept each other, which is my favorite part. I mean, it's the best part of any friendship, but it's the best part of their friendship is that they really do accept each other. Like never do they ask each other to change. They got to the brink of death where Finn almost killed Jake, and neither of them were really mad at the end of it. Like Finn's not mad at Jake for doing his dumbass plan that almost got them killed, but then Jake's like not even mad at Finn for almost killing him.
Jake never seemed to be in true peril. Like, it seemed like he could handle Finn.
Well, he did, but then when Finn got that sword,
It was emotional peril.
Like
Jake did not like what he was seeing.
It's true. It would be emotional peril. I mean, it was very funny that the Finn under the being hypnotized, he's fighting. He's trying to fight Jake. Jake is stretching all around the Coliseum, and Finn never goes for his body. He's only going for his head.
Yep. I thought of that after watching, because during it I didn't really remember the episode, so the first rewatch I was kind of like, Finn's not really taking the most direct approach here against Jake. Like there's pieces of Jake everywhere that he could be going after, but he's really focused on his head.
But I guess it makes sense
the
that
Fight King did say, "Give me his head."
That's true.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not really explainable why Jake is stretching that way anyway, to just like leave so much of his stretched out body vulnerable. But
Jake's not into making sense in this episode.
No, he's way more like trying to appeal to Finn. Like, hey, buddy, come on, man.
Nick, you brought up that like they just get each other. they understand each other so well that like there's so many layers to how well they get each other that Jake isn't even sure that Finn is doing what's best for them, but like Finn knows that that's how Jake will respond, and that's an important part of his plan, right? It's just like all this like sort of reverse psychology or whatever, just like this deep bond. And so it is like less development and more table setting for them. You know what I mean? Like where later where they have conflicts or when they can't get on the same page like they could with the Fight King, it means more because you've seen like how much they get each other and how well they work together.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really love how Finn basically had to outsmart Jake. It seemed a little uncool of him. Like, you know what I mean?
Of which one?
Of Finn to like try and trick Jake, you know? Like that's what it felt a little mean to me.
I will say though, Jake's plan was a little selfish in that he didn't want to battle at all and was just gonna hula hoop for morale. I know the morale thing makes it feel like he's looking out for all their best interests, but it's kind of like you fight, you do the fighting, I'll keep up morale.
He digs about a 6-inch hole and then spends the rest of his time singing and covering himself in dirt to look like a mermaid. Like he's really not
that's
participating.
selfish.
Yeah. Jake's plan is not good. It is bonkers. It's bad. It's not.
Well, this does bring up a recurring thing in the podcast, which is I'm a big fan of nonsense, and nonsense sometimes drives you crazy.
Yeah, it's nonsensical, but it also feels like each of them are being shitty to the other in like a little bit. They don't do things that like best buds should do to each other.
Well, it's like a sort of a toxic understanding. It's like they understand each other, but it's like Jake is distracted and not focused on the goal and actually endangering his best friend and brother by not focusing. And Finn decides to basically use a decoy Jake, but then he uses the real Jake as a decoy as well. Like he's basically like potentially sacrificing Jake to make his plan work without cluing him in. Like they understand each other so well, and even if like getting from point A to point B requires a little bit of like them tricking each other or not treating each other that well, I was thinking about like how much better these two like resolve conflict than Finn does with any of his love interests, right? Because like if his closest relationship is Jake, and this is how they work together, then like it's no wonder none of his shit works when he's in love, you know. And originally I was thinking like, oh, Jake and Finn are so much closer, their bond is so much tighter, they know how to push the other one's buttons or whatever to like encourage them passively to like get to the finish line. But as you're bringing it up, like, yeah, maybe Finn's not being that nice and Jake's not being helpful enough. And like that's kind of setting himself up for failure with his love interests that are like coming up pretty soon.
This episode is not an example of homies helping homies always.
No.
So how many episodes are there where Finn and Jake are at odds with each other? Only a handful, I think. And I'm pretty sure if it ever happens, they pretty much always resolve it through violence, right?
They have like a good brother fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty true. And everything I can remember, yeah.
Scrap.
What was the episode where they legit just go at each other?
I forget. I can remember it in my head.
Like
but,
they're fighting like the barn. Is that the big giant guy? And they have to.
Ugh,
I can't remember this one.
Oh, the one with Matthew Broderick.
Jake suit.
Mm-hmm.
Jake suit's another one where they're inflicting pain on each other.
Yeah.
I guess it's how brothers work sometimes. I don't know. It's a good point. It's a good point that it's, I mean, I'm sitting here looking glass half full that they really get each other, but the circumstances are so hard to understand because they're in imminent danger so often.
Yeah, it's pretty
like,
much
you know, it's
the
like,
setting is Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, me and Sean are never, I don't think we've almost ever been in a situation like that. My brother, like
where someone like has power over you and is forcing you to duel to the death.
Yeah, exactly. Like where you're, yeah.
We can't know how we would respond in that situation.
No, and repeatedly. I don't know.
But it brings up a lot of frustrating behavior with both of these characters.
They're frustrating.
Frustrating is a great word for this episode.
I found myself like immediately like, Jake, what are you doing? Like, just there's something to do. Like there's something to focus on right now. And then I had like took a second to be like, I'm watching a cartoon. I know that there's like 7 more seasons and several specials of this show. I basically know what happens. Like it's cool. Just watch.
Yeah. I did enjoy watching it though.
Yeah.
I did have a fun time with this episode. You seem exacerbated by it, Eric.
Yeah, not in my top 10.
No.
No way. No, it was like so contained.
Yeah.
As you were saying, like there's don't forget your floaties. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Where like every single like line that every character reads like reverberates like into the past and the future for this character. And those are definitely the ones that I gravitate to and the ones that I appreciate the most. This one today was kind of like, they just fought some ghosts. They fought some ghosts and sort of resolved some conflict between the two of them, but basically by not directly addressing any of it.
Yeah. Did you guys see the snail?
Yes, I saw the snail. Dave, did you see the snail?
I did not catch it. I knew about this segment though, and I looked into it later, and I was disappointed in myself for not catching it.
Nick, did you see the snail?
I did.
2 out of 3. Play that 2 out of 3 theme song.
2, 3.
2 out of 3.